Live. Hold
All
on.
right.
All right.
I'll do the disclaimer. All right.
Okay.
Disclaimer. Next generation carriers and guests are individual union members speaking in a personal capacity, and they do not represent the views. Oh, I don't even have my microphone. They do not represent the views of the NALC, the United States Postal Service, or any other entity that is spoken on this program. If you enjoy our podcast, please subscribe to our monthly email newsletter. Go to nextgenerationcarriers.com/email. Fill in your name and email. Click subscribe. Also, if you would like to get in contact with the Next Generation Carriers podcast, send us an email at nextgenerationcarriers.com. Also, let's update the listeners on what our subscribers are. So, the data for November 2025. Spotify, we have 1,010 followers. Apple, we have 624 followers. YouTube, 1,232 subscribers. TikTok, 11,000 followers. Facebook, 10,000 followers. And the Next Generation Carriers monthly email newsletter has 1,211 subscribers. My name is John Murphy. I'm a city letter carrier out in Naples, Florida, branch 4716. I'll pass it off to Chris.
My name is Chris Sampieri. I'm an 8-year city letter carrier, and I'm a member of Branch 18, Southeastern Massachusetts. Margo?
Hello, I am a almost 5-year letter carrier out of Des Moines, Iowa, branch 352.
Awesome. Greg?
Greg Samoluk, president of Branch 334, Framingham, carrier for over 20 years.
And also,
James
we
Cohn, president of Branch 764, Dedham, Massachusetts, carrier for 20 years.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And Brian, if you want to give yourself an introduction for maybe some people who may not know you.
Yeah, I'm Brian. I'm a letter carrier from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and I have been a letter carrier for almost 22 years now. How's that?
All right. Awesome. Murphy, I know you got something.
All right. Let me begin. I do not want you to follow me or anyone else if you are looking for a Moses to lead you out of this capitalist wilderness. You will stay right where you are. I will not lead you into the promised land if I could, because if I lead you in, someone else would lead you out. That is a quote from Eugene Debs. He is the co-founder of the IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World. So, as we begin tonight, I want to give a shout out to Build a Fighting NALC, BFN. The reform movement BFN has put out a 2026 contract demand survey for all city carriers to fill out. Fill out your name, email, branch number, and rank a list of common sense demands and concerns, and then fill in your own demands and concerns that aren't listed. Go to fightingnalc.com/survey. It is Tuesday, November 4th at 8 a.m. this morning. There was over 500 people that have filled out the survey so far. So we have Brian Renfroe currently in studio with us at Next Generation, but I am talking to you. I am talking to the CCAs and the branch leaderships all across the country. Are we going to continue to sit on the sidelines, or are we going to actually fight for a fair contract? We need to start putting the collective back into collective bargaining. Our union could win strong contracts by identifying the most popular and most important demands, proactively organizing our coworkers around those demands, being more transparent with members and the public about what's going on in negotiations, using collective action and around the workplace to pressure the company, USPS, into saying yes at the bargaining table. Involving members in the collective bargaining process is not only how we build trust and unity, but essential to building the power we need to win. We need to put the collective back in collective bargaining. When members are given the choice to fight and win, we stand up and we fight. It's also crucial to remember that employers also have a playbook, one based on fear, uncertainty, and division. Management will do everything they can to drag out negotiations and send the message that it's futile to fight for anything more than what the company has offered. Labor history has proven over and over again that member participation isn't just a good idea or the right thing to do, it's the source of our union power. And that is important because a strong contract isn't solely won by having the facts on our side or the best arguments at the bargaining table. If that were the case, we would win a record contract every time we go into negotiations. The truth is what we win at the bargaining table is dependent on the power we build in the workplace. That power isn't built in a day. A strong contract is won by membership that has been involved long before the bargaining begins and has a meaningful role every step of the way until a contract is ratified. By keeping coworkers informed, we show the boss that we mean business and that their plan to divide us won't work. What is a contract campaign? A contract campaign is a method of fighting for change that is rooted in mobilizing union members. It requires engaging our members like never before, while at the same time reaching out to our numerous allies for mutual support. This means broadening the way we think about the union's relationship to management. With a contract campaign, the heart of bargaining is the rank and file member, challenging USPS at the work site and in the community. Using the contract campaign approach means thinking about the union as an instrument to bring about significant changes, including not only a change in the relationship between the union membership and the union, but also the union and its relationship to the Postal Service and the Postal Service's relationship and duties within the community. A contract campaign is a collective action plan with a beginning, middle, and end, working towards demands that we are trying to win. A contract campaign has a target, the boss. A contract campaign involves a series of escalating actions over time, which progressively turn up the heat on the target and create the conditions for winning our demands. A campaign mountain is a visual representation of some different phases of a typical contract campaign. The campaign mountain helps us identify and plan in advance some of the ingredients we need to win so that we can put them together in a way that maximizes our success. Campaigns are critical to shifting the balance of power in our workplaces and industries. Lots of labor unions do these. The NALC needs to be part of this. They also help us build confidence in each other and our ability to win when we are united. They win in the short term, and they build our muscle for winning in the long term. So, how does it begin? We need to lay the foundation. This phase happens way before bargaining begins. We need to hold digital planning meetings across the country. We need to put together an electronic bargaining survey that could be shared using QR codes and text messaging. This survey will help National learn what the top priorities are. It will also be important as a way to gather contact information so that when bargaining updates could be emailed and text to the membership directly. The bargaining survey results in members' demands, and that is very important. These demands are widely and deeply felt issues from the rank and file that National can publicize at the campaign kickoff and be brought to the bargaining table. At the contract campaign kickoff, workers make it clear the contract expiration was a deadline, not really a reference point, and should not drag out for more than the history of all these other ones have been 300 days, 400 days, 700 days. We need to create a timeline for actions, starting with the contract campaign kickoff and leading to a successful collective bargaining agreement. We need, as a rank and file, to be involved with our union. And lastly, rank and file unionism, not business unionism. Rank and file unionism is a model where ordinary workers have direct democratic power within a union, while business unionism is a top-down model where the union bureaucracy negotiates with management, often viewing themselves as business partners. The key differences are in power structure and strategy. Rank and file unionism emphasizes worker control and a class struggle approach, while business unionism practices a collaborative relationship with the employer. A lot of our union members treat union involvement as an insurance policy. In other words, since union dues are vital for adequate representation and are paid like insurance premiums, some members view the process as a transaction that gives protection when something goes wrong on the job. While the union does serve this function, the best approach of a union is not of a third-party organization that only provides individual service, but as a collective of similarly situated workers banding together to fight for common interests. Workers in the union and members in the union must be equipped and united so that the union can be considered a worthy advocate fighting on behalf of the shared interests of all workers represented. We often hear the union is you. Yet, all too often, members act as though the union is a few elected officers whose job is to do everything. We have to change that pattern or the union will fail. The union is all of us, operating like a family, in the struggle taking on different roles that contribute to achieving our collective objectives. Now, the elephant in the room. I, John Murphy, have stated numerous times that I wouldn't have Brian Renfroe on our podcast again, but here we are. The episode isn't about one person. This episode is a call to action to all city carriers. From the CCAs to the branch presidents, we can no longer sit on the sidelines and allow a few individuals to continue to erode the contract. The erosion of the contract and the continuation of the toxic workroom floor has been happening since before Renfroe became president. We need to admit the union ideology we practice of business unionism top down has been a complete failure for all labor unions. And we need to move towards a rank and file, bottom up unionism that puts actual power into the membership and have the entire 200,000 NALC members fully engaged in the collective bargaining process. Will I vote for Renfroe in 2026? No, but this is directly and solely about the rank and file of the NALC members having to actually mobilize and unite in 2026 for a fair contract. February 2026, the Sunday before the start of the contract talks is the date Build a Fighting NALC is organizing around for a fair contract now. Day of action. You should get your branch on board as soon as possible and help mobilize the rank and file. Now let's begin tonight's episode. Chris?
Thank you for that. So on that note that Brian brought up too, so tonight it's really about the office of the president. We have people, a lot of leaders are coming together for these rallies. We know we need them. Mike in the chat brought up a good question, and his question is this: what specifically are we doing to get the public on our side as negotiations approach? Well, those are going to be my questions, and there's going to be 3 of them, all revolving just that. How do we get the public? How do we get the rank and file? How do we get, more importantly, politicians who we give money to? How are we going to get all these people on board? So my first question to you, Brian. These are, actually, it's going to be a long walk till I get to the question, so just bear with me on this. But so we've been forming a rank and file group called the February Rally Working Group. We started a couple of months ago because we know that we're going to need rallies. We're going to need to see rank and file people, and all this stuff needs to happen. And the Fight Like Hell rallies, I'm glad to see that they happened. We haven't seen that in a long time. I'm glad that it happened. Us in Boston, we put together one of the biggest rallies in the country. It went well. We had politicians, media, everyone showed up, but it wasn't enough time. 3 weeks wasn't enough. We needed a lot more time. And we're going into, we know the contract's expiring in May. We know contract negotiations are starting in February. So one of the proposals that we came up with in the working group is 2 strategies, because we were trying to figure out one, but we have 2. So the first strategy the group came up with was this. It's called the 50 states and territories rallies. And the date we were looking at was February 22nd, right around the time you're going to be probably starting negotiations. And these are the points we're trying to get at. That 1, it gets everybody in every state. If there's people in Seattle, if there's people in Arizona, I mean, I'm in Boston, but it can get people locally to organize. It can get people to organize, get the permits, get the rallies. organize. I've talked to presidents of Massachusetts. They want to get buses to come down, organize buses more effectively, plenty of time to get quotes, do the PA system, get speakers, get other unions to come and speak for us. If we had more time, this would be a lot easier than doing it on the fly. And also, it would tell the presidents, and with your blessing, of course, you being the president of our union, we can get a lot more support on that. Um, also the other point too is it develops leadership qualities out of people because we had people step up to get a PA. We got people to pull permits with the town, learn about insurance, learn about, and also someone was like, how we get electricity to the PA system. We had to get an extension cord. All of these things were learned. And now I would say in Boston, we're a well-oiled machine on how to do a great rally. We made the connections with the APW, the mail handlers union, the teachers union. All the branches came together. So the idea is February 22nd for a 50 state rally. What do you think about doing first step? Because I'll get to DC next, but this is local. But what do you think about a about a 50 state rally?
I think we need to do more than 50 states. As you mentioned, the Fight Like Hell rallies on March the 23rd. We had almost 300 of them around the country. And anytime we plan an action like that, I think there has to be a very clear goal. And we can look in our recent history at different types of action. I say recent, within, let's say, 20 years. Different types of actions. Of course, what we did on March 23rd, you're absolutely right. We need more than 3 weeks' notice. The reason there was only 3 weeks' notice there is we had an executive order drafted to destroy us in the White House. So we had to do that as quickly as we possibly could. We can go back in our history. We can look at 2007 in collective bargaining. We had a massive rally at L'Enfant Plaza because there was one issue that was keeping us from getting to the point of agreement, and that was the Postal Service continuing to expand the subcontracting of our jobs. And the intent of that rally was to directly influence the people at L'Enfant Plaza to see us. We can fast forward to 2011. We did things that were also directly intended to influence members of Congress. We did rallies at their offices to stop a really harmful piece of legislation that had 5-day delivery and so on and so forth. 2015, we did another action at L'Enfant Plaza that was targeted directly at then Postmaster General Patrick Donahoe. And the result of that is he left, he quit. And then you mentioned the Fight Like Hell rallies we had earlier this year. As we move into calendar year 2026 in January, but more than likely, most of this is going to happen in February and beyond, there are several different things that we are planning to do. One of them is a very large national day of action that we absolutely would have in at least all 50 states. We have 300 rallies with 3 weeks notice. I think with a few months notice, which is what we're going to have, we'll have even more than that. But we have to think about who do we want to influence there. And I think the beauty and the most impactful thing we can do with a large national day of action is generating attention through the local media and really mobilizing the public on our behalf. So that's the target there, but that's not the only thing. It's very likely that we could potentially do some other actions in Washington, D.C., directed at L'Enfant Plaza, depending on what may be going on in this sort of volatile political environment that we live in. It's possible that there could be something to do with members of Congress. So these things are things that we are all that we are looking at. We've not nailed down any dates to make public. We do, as you guys know, have a national rap session here in just a couple of weeks in Cleveland, Ohio. I think very shortly after that, we will start the planning and provide all the materials that we provide. We provided to every single branch that did those rallies back in March, a very similar kind of toolkit. Here's how you get a permit. Here's messaging for the media. Here's how you do ABC, facilitate, members of Congress and all that stuff. And one point I want to make, because John made this point that I thought was really good, and Chris, you referenced it too. Our union is able to do things like this. And when you look throughout our history, there's a lot of examples of it. Because of, John, you talked about rank and file unionism. Rank and file unionism really comes down to one thing. In order for it to be effective, it takes a certain level of activism by the members. And in our union, we are blessed beyond belief when we compare to every other union in this country to have the most active membership of any union in America. And when it comes to rallying around something like collective bargaining, which we are deep in preparation for and doing really more than I think we've ever done before as a union to ensure everybody has their opportunity to have some input. And we move into 2026 and the sort of visible action becomes even more collective as we approach open and collective bargaining. That level of activism of our members, I expect to be at an all-time high, which gives us a great opportunity to really begin on the right foot. And then as bargaining progresses, in the event certain issues come up and become stumbling blocks like they did in 2007, we'll have the ability to turn more of that action on as we need to.
All right. I like the idea. I do like the rank and file committee. That is something that I think we're all pretty happy to see that we're doing this in advance. So that's great. I'm happy with that. But what we do need, and I'm gonna I'll push it again, but
Sure.
we need a day for a local rally, right? If we're gonna get permits, we're gonna get PAs. We want to get people there. If I'm gonna go in New England, we're talking about getting buses, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, bringing them all to Boston. The kickoff to help you do your job. We want to do this, right? We want to help the president get the best contract because you get a good contract, I get a good contract, we all get a good contract. Is that, and I said, I'll get to DC, but like I said, February 22nd. It's a Sunday. It's a good day. Most people can attend, but how do you like that one? Because if you say yes, it's going to make us not all, some of our branches are going to wait to hear from you. That's just a fact. You are the president. So does February 22nd, that's like a local, not DC. DC will be we got a different day, but how does that day look?
It's a possibility. I'm not in a place to commit to it right now. There's a lot of scheduling that, still has to take place, and we are constantly monitoring, that stuff that our regions and branches are doing. But February 22nd is a possibility. As far as the timing, I will assure you of this. There's going to be plenty of notice. I mean, we're talking about more than 2 months, probably 2 months plus a few weeks of notice. And, what we'll do again is exactly what we did in March. We've got a lot of people at headquarters, our staff that's very experienced doing this type stuff, and they are going to provide every resource that a branch needs, whether that's about information on how to get permits or assistance doing that, whether that's materials and in terms of like toolkits of things you do with the media, signs and shirts and messaging and all that stuff. I assure you we'll have that stuff out there plenty far in advance for our branches to make those preparations, and each of our members, regardless of where they are, to make plans to participate.
Okay. Yeah. Let me go to DC, just too. But I'll just say this too about with the rally. I mean, what we got from National in Boston was shirts and a sign, which was appreciative. That's all we got. That helped. It did. I like the banner. I like the shirts. But we in Boston did it, the rank and file we did it on our days off. And like I said, I'm happy to help work with anybody in National, but National just said, we're going to get the permits. And they said, good luck. And that's all they did. But we can talk about the other one, which you have a lot more influence, is Washington, D.C., the big one, LaFlante Plaza. This is the big
hang on,
one.
Chris, before you move on, I just want to be clear. If there was a disconnect there, we provided to all of our branches that contacted who we asked them to contact all kinds of information.
Yeah.
So, we'll be sure to, that information gets out this time, and it'll be similar. I mean, I hate that it sounds like at least some people did not get that information, but we'll do everything we can to be sure that doesn't happen this time around.
All right. I mean, it's just, I think, like I said, it's been I think the problem really is that it's been, 15 years, 2007. It's been so long. I think a lot of leaders, I don't think it's because they're evil and they want to see it fail. I just feel that a lot of people don't know how to do a rally. They don't know how, they don't know what it takes, because we know I've been an activist for a long time. John's been an activist, months. It's 6 months is not, that's because December's gone. We don't, we're going to be delivering, we're going to be working late. So that's 1 month gone for us too. But I think what we're looking at is like, give us the date and we can that like I said, that date, February 22nd, that's what's going to help us. That'll help us more than give us nothing. Give us a date. That's what we were. Good God. But John, I know John, you wanted to say something because John and I, we do this stuff a lot.
Yeah, I want to plug in because it's mostly like the branches. I want to speak to the leaderships across the country that are listening to this. Um, the AFL-CIO, that's the labor federation we're part of, and they all have central labor councils, right? That's something that branches need to be connected with, and that's something that they can't wait till January on. That's why the idea of announcing a date now could help mobilize the members, because December is going to be a lot of Christmas parties and a lot of branch meetings getting canceled, and then people are going to be working 16 hours a week depending on the big cities, so you already lose that month. And come January, it's going to be snowing and cold. So I think sooner rather than later, a date should be formed because we need to start building the connections with the coalition. That's like you're saying, Renfroe saying is to connect with the community. And the best way to connect with the community is our central labor councils. And if you're a branch leader or a union member that doesn't understand what our central labor council is, I think that's one of the faults of the NALC being very top down. Like a lot of people, oh, my branch pays into the CLC. Well, do you have a delegate there? No. So I think announcing a date ahead of time would help the grassroots, the bottom up idea bloom, because it's been decades since we actually mobilized real action. Like, it's great that we could have rallies everywhere. Um, but if I'm down here in Naples, Florida. If we just took a bus over to Miami 2 hours to the east of us, or Tampa 2 hours to the north of us, I think that would have been more impactful than instead of 20 people hanging out on a street corner getting thumbs up. So that's just me.
Yeah, John, you make a good point about the AFL. You know, we did this back in March, and we'll absolutely do it with this campaign. Is, you know, ensuring that all the affiliate unions, you know, which I serve on the AFL Executive Council with, and a lot of our staff meet with them on different topics. So there's tons of communication, ensure that they get the word out to their local folks. You know, when we hold rallies, it's great when we get other unions to participate. But the idea of that information being distributed through their own union channels from sort of here in DC or whatever their headquarters level is down, as well as us including in the information that we provide to our branches or our folks locally, to reach out to, you know, depending on, I guess, what their level of involvement is with the CLCs and the state feds, the AFL, because that ranges from very little involvement to fully affiliated. We got a lot of letter carriers around the country that are presidents of central labor councils. You know, so like some places we have really close relationships and work together all the time. Other places, not so much. But I think maximizing it, as you said, is a really important thing to bring, you know, people outside of just NALC members, and the most natural people to go to first are our brothers and sisters in the labor movement. We'll be sure we do everything we can from not just the headquarters level down, but also to encourage and facilitate that interaction at the local level.
All right, Capone, and then I got Greg.
Oh, am I unmuted? All right. Hey, Brian. So how do you in the NALC rallies, and what's the message you'd want to direct to the public? The NALC envision of what it looks like. Again, the message to the public, campaign, media. What does the NALC see this?
I think when I look, the first thing that pops in my mind, I talked earlier about that, you know, you got to have a goal of who you're trying to influence and what that message is. The first thing that comes to my mind with the public is the public already likes us, right? You know, letter carriers are held in really, really high regard by the public. We know that based on our interactions every day. But there's a lot of, you know, independent polls and studies and things like that. I think it is not a matter of getting them on our side. I think it's more a matter of bringing to their attention what they already know, and that is our value, and that we should be compensated for that value. And when it comes to public education, these local rallies and the local media coverage that results from them is really the best way. So to me, the most immediate thing I think of is educating the public, hearing from the public, and building sort of this groundswell so that both at the bargaining table and, interest arbitration, which is a, place we could very possibly end up, that helps us quite a bit to demonstrate letter carriers' value. Because ultimately, when we say we want to be compensated and we should be compensated more in whatever way that is, it comes down to what our value is and what we deserve. And I think the public being on our side and us being able to demonstrate that is a really good way for us to do it. And look, it happens through rallies, it happens through, as I said, local media coverage, but it also happens through like digital campaigns and things like that, where we engage the public and, get them commenting and are able to, put together information that can be useful. But I think the visibility of us taking action, like we're talking about in February, maybe on February 22nd, to me, the most immediate thing is just that education and demonstrating our value to the public.
Please show real letter carriers on the commercials. Don't show any actors. Go out to the
We've never
neighborhood
used,
with a real
NALC's
carrier.
never used an actor.
I know some other companies, corporations do, but man, you're right about the public loves us. One of my first reps, Bobby DeMott, he's over in the Bromley Heath projects in Jamaica Plain, and he walks in there and they scream. They all know him. He's been there 20, 30 years. Follow carriers around that the community loves seeing us. Just even send out a carrier on a Sunday, put a camera on him walking through his route, and show everybody how much we mean to the public and how much they love us in the neighborhood.
Yep. It's a shame Bobby's never been on a commercial. He'd be perfect for it.
They don't have commercials around 25 minutes, unfortunately.
That's true.
That's true.
Brian, I was gonna say, did you just have a flashback to the last couple conventions with Bobby DeMott talking at the mic?
Oh,
I didn't know.
no. I've known Bobby
No,
for years.
Bobby's the best.
Yeah.
I just wanted to build off of what Capone just said. About the public, and I feel like we don't use that enough to our advantage in just everyday, like not just the negotiations going forward, but like we need to show the public what we actually do, right? We deliver UPS's packages. They're coming back to us, right? We deliver Amazon packages, but I feel like the public is so blind on that. They see a package at the door. They don't see that, oh, the label, where the label came from. They just see that it got delivered. Um, there needs to be a better approach. I'm glad you said that we're going to do more of these rallies, and we really need that to happen because the membership and not just the people in this Zoom tonight that are 24/7 NALC or post office, but we need to show the members that don't really want to get involved that it's not just ebbs and flows. It's got to be full tilt until we get that ultimate goal of what we're all looking for. When you talked about like a social media blitz, has the NALC ever looked into doing an actual commercial? I know we have some funds down there in Washington. Is it possible ever to get an actual commercial during, like, I'm not saying like a Super Bowl, but an actual, like, to promote, like, this is the NALC, this is the people that deliver your medicine and hopefully sell your ballots going forward. Is there any way to do something like that? Is that ever talked about down in Washington?
Yep, we've actually done it. We've done it recently. It's just not terribly visible. So we've not done a television commercial in a number of years. The last one we did, I think, was it's probably been 10 years ago or so. It was I think we ran it like during Meet the Press and on Sunday mornings. I think it was to do with the yearly appropriation legislation where we used to have to fight to keep our language that required 6-day delivery in. We have in recent years, in a campaign after the pandemic, when we were advocating for Congress in the COVID stimulus legislation, if you guys remember, there was a series of bills. We did a lot of creative stuff, digital commercials, and targeted the public in certain members of Congress, in the districts of certain members of Congress. So, for example, we had a number of Republican targets, and the commercials we made, these were typically rural areas, and the commercials we made kind of portrayed letter carriers as, just as the fabric of America. Like, think of a Chevy truck commercial. They were designed to influence the particular people in that location. More recently, we have, with everything we've had to deal with the administration so far in 2025, we have not produced any thing that we've actually used yet, but we are prepared on basically a moment's notice to produce and distribute that stuff. And some people will chuckle at this, but I swear it's true. One of those things is to produce a commercial that, should we get in a place like we were in February, where the administration was close to considering some action, you produce a commercial to run on Mar-a-Lago cable. That's a real thing. It exists. So we're in a spot where we've used this stuff, but we're in a place now where we can create a lot of the type things that we would need to do for, I mean, it's been primarily obviously for the legislative, political, administrative stuff this year. But what we're talking about with bargaining going into next year, in many ways, it's a campaign. And like some of the things we've done legislatively over the years and had success with, including in 2025, it's still a campaign to influence someone. So there is no question that some type of ads and engaging the public that way, with the ability you have to target now through digital stuff, which is not just social media. I mean, it's, Netflix and whatever, Apple TV, Amazon Prime, all that stuff, all that's on the table. So we're actually viewing this preparation for what we're going to do action-wise surrounding collective bargaining in many ways as a campaign, the same way that we've done a number of things over the years and been successful with on the legislative or administrative front. So commercials, absolutely.
Awesome. All right, Margot, you had a question?
Yeah, so I guess like for the March 23rd rallies, there were a lot of like signs and t-shirts that were provided to the local branches so that they could do their rallies. And this time, it's going to be like a contract campaign, at least so far that we've talked about. And I just wanted to ask, like, so what kind of things do you think that we will write, like we'll have written on the signs, and
Mhm.
what kind of things will be written on the t-shirts? Are they going to be like actual like demands, like all career workforce and other stuff that we're fighting for, like maybe $30 an hour starting wage, et cetera, et cetera? Is it gonna be that kind of stuff? Because I think with Fight Like Hell, like I think a lot of people knew that the post office was at risk at the time. But I feel like the connection could have been a little bit clearer. So yeah, what kind of concrete demands are we gonna get like signs for and t-shirts for?
Yeah, we'll probably, from a general perspective, do it under the Fight Like Hell branding, but we also are going to have specific messages, and a few of the things you mentioned would 100% be included in it. I think the fact that a public, rally, like it's something we're doing all around the country, which would be geared towards the general public, we would want to message it in a way that was very simple for them to understand. So, for example, we would say all career workforce, but our messaging in a rally like that might be something like, all letter carriers deserve a long career. Everyone should start, no more non-career, no more low wage starting pay, just general things that would give, because they're not going to dig into the details. I'm just going off the top of my head. We would talk to our comms folks about like how to do this kind of thing. I think if we then were doing something, let's say in DC or at postal facilities where maybe certain managers that we would want to be, let's just say, disrupted or have something in front of their eyeballs, that might be a little different. We may phrase something in a way that they understand. But, when we first started the Fight Like Hell thing in February, it was before the administration wanted to do the executive order. We had several things. It was bargaining, heat safety, crime, don't privatize the postal service and don't attack us, all this stuff. I would think we would do the same thing with multiple messages, but in a way that the public would understand. Last thing that I'll just give is a little bit of a caveat, like I talked about in 2007, where we had basically this single issue that was huge because the Postal Service was trying to contract our work out. So it's not letter carriers doing it, like take our jobs away. Um, Sitting here right now, I can't anticipate a single issue like that coming up in bargaining, but I don't know who we're going to be bargaining with next year. I don't know if the PMG that's there now is still going to be there. I don't know if the deputy, so there's no way to know. So it's very possible that when we get to that point in time, there might be one major issue that we want to focus everything on. So we've got to kind of maintain at least a little bit of flexibility to shape the general message is not going to change, but maybe to narrow the message and kind of hone in on a particular thing if it becomes an issue like it did then.
All right, Greg, and then myself for the. Go ahead, Greg.
Brian, I just keep seeing the number 30 pop up, so I'm assuming everybody would love the $30 starting wage. If we could, you'd make a lot of the membership happy with that. But
I think it needs to be higher than that.
I'd go higher too.
Hey.
Chris, I think you had something on DC. I just
Yeah. So, with DC, obviously, Lafont Plaza, that's the big thing. And this is something that obviously people, like I said, geographically it can't happen, but we're in Boston. It's an 8-hour bus ride. We could organize buses. People in Florida, Georgia, Baltimore could all make it down. It would imagine if management just sees an ocean of light blue or red, whatever color we feel like. I'm a light blue guy, clearly, but we go down there, we show up, and all of the people who we give LCPF money to, we give our $5, I give 20, whatever you're giving. It's time we call in these favors from these politicians and they show up to support us because it's time. I want to see my money in action. You took our money. Stand with us, right? I think DC has to happen. Obviously, you are the person who can control this the most. This is like, I can get a permit tomorrow to go in Boston. We can organize Boston. That's something. But DC is you. Have you thought of a rally? We were thinking President's Day. It's a holiday. We could do it. But whatever you're thinking, Pat, have you thought of doing a DC rally and getting our politicians who take our LCPF money and just saying, look, we're doing in this day. Here comes a march. We'll go from the union headquarters all the way down. Have you thought of that?
Yeah, listen, we could parade hundreds of them if we wanted to, and we might do that. So I'm sure some of you that are listening were at the big rally we had in DC at the end of February. So before whatever it was, 3 weeks or so before we had the national rallies, we had a pretty big rally in DC. We had about a little over 1,000 people here. And we had a lot of members of Congress that wanted to speak there. And the thing that we have to always be a little cautious of is when members of Congress come speak at a rally that you have, sometimes they want to make it about them and not about us and why we're there. So we have to exercise some caution there, but certainly we have a ton of relationships and support. In this climate, having our Republican friends speak publicly about things like this is definitely a positive thing. So the short answer to your question is yes, we absolutely could do it. I think we have to be kind of strategic about it, though. And there's going to be multiple things that happen. Look, when we have a local rally, sometimes a member of Congress can maybe be more impactful locally than they could be here in DC. So we'll utilize, whoever we can twist their arm and make them do it if we want to. Okay. And you're absolutely right when you say that, the Letter Care Political Fund is, it's kind of what paves the pathway for that and helps us create the relationships that we have that, thankfully has gotten us to a place where this year we're in a position, where we've not been harmed, where there's a whole lot of our brothers and sisters that are other federal employees that it's been a real rough time for them.
It has, especially for federal workers right now. So it's a piggyback too. And I agree. So in Boston, we were able to get Congressman Stephen Lynch. For those of you who don't know, he's the co-author of HR 70. He's been solid for the city letter carrier. Watch him grill Louis DeJoy on YouTube when you're done. It was a great grilling. Pretty good stuff to watch him do that. He deserved it. So he's always been on the side of city letter carrier. So we're blessed where we are here in Boston area where I'm at in my district too. He's my representative.
His
But
whole
with the-
family worked at the post office
I
except him.
know all of them, every single one, and that was in the speech, and he'll say that every time, which is great. I mean, that's someone who doesn't forget his roots, and that's nice. We definitely need that too. But with like once again, I'm going to go back again. The day, if this has to be done through the executive council, I understand this, to have a democratic view on it and vote on it, but the sooner you get us those dates, the better we can react, the more time we can plan. We need the dates from you. You're, like I said, my local will not do anything until you give the date. Margot, Toronto, John's local. I can go down. I know everyone here, and we as activists can say it. So that if the biggest help we need is those dates, like I said, go to the executive council, however you want to do it. I understand it's a process, but you give us a date, I get the permit the next day. We get the PA, we get the machine going. So, if you can do that, help us out. Help us help you, help us. Like that's why we're here. We know, like I said, your office has the power. That's what it is, and everyone else is on board. But sooner you can do it, that'd be great. My third question for the night, too. And Margot touched on this, and I think Greg talked about it too, is a contract survey. You've done them in the past. We know them because everyone's pissed off when they don't get one. That's the whole thing. So what we've been doing at BFM is doing our own contract survey. We got 500 responses. We're texting people. We have a list we go from. We've all divvied it up. We're spreading it out. We're getting good responses, and it's a really good thing. And it's a short one. It takes 20 seconds to fill out. It lets people tell you what we want in the negotiation. The priorities, $30 an hour, all career workforce, career time from 13 and a half years to 6. We have all these demands. Health insurance is going up. These are all the demands to let you know what we want at the table. Now, we're doing it on our site, and our goal is 2,000 people. That's good. But 2,000 is not even, I think, 1% of the membership. You have an office, you have resources, you have people, you have the money. You could do a contract survey in 2 hours, text every single member, possibly, and retiree, and get us that data. Have you considered texting? I mean, if you want, we would love to work with you on this, or your office, or anybody, but the sooner, have you thought of doing a contract survey to reach every member? Because trust me, when people don't get it, they get pissed, and I'm sure you've heard it, but a contract survey to every member. What do you think?
Oh, we're doing it. I mean, I wrote about this in the Poster Record 2 months ago. So the entire process of bargaining prep this time, we've really tried to dig really deep on ensuring that we get as many viewpoints and create as many opportunities for our members to provide input. And on this sort of survey point, there's a difference between a poll and a survey. Those are two totally separate things. A poll is something in our world that a professional pollster does. We do polling. We've done it for years and years and years of our members. Sometimes it's, as we lead up to election about what candidates we endorse. Sometimes it's a poll like we did after the ratification vote in January, to just get feedback on priorities. And a poll is something where the pollster reaches out and gets enough responses at random until they get enough to reach a level of statistical validity. So we've done that. Those are being compiled. As I wrote in, I believe it was in the October magazine, one of the next steps, which will happen pretty shortly after the national rap session. You mentioned, or somebody, Chris, I think you mentioned the rank and file committee earlier. We had a rank and file committee. We got another one coming in January. We provided that information to our executive council members. At the national rap session in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks, we are going to have each of our executive council members in their subcommittees have interaction with the folks that are there about the topics they're discussing. After that, we are going to make a survey available for every single active member. And we hope all 200,000 of them fill it out. It is going to largely be geared around economic priorities. It's not really I don't think it's an exercise in a really deep thought exercise, or that we would find disagreement in the things we want to achieve economically. Everyone agrees we should have an all-career workforce. Everyone agrees our starting pay should be a lot higher. Our top pay should be a lot higher. Our pay in the middle should be higher. It should take less time to get to top step. We'd love to see people advance in the pay scale. It's really about the prioritization of each of those topics or issues so that as this process plays out, once we get into late February and start moving forward, really understanding where the membership is as a whole, based on this polling, the surveys, the rank and file stuff, obviously our official bargaining positions from national conventions. It's really about the importance of certain issues versus other issues. So as we move through the process, we know what the feeling of the membership is in terms of prioritizing all those economic goals. And this survey is going to be a really, really big part of that. Now, it's being put together. Obviously, when we do a survey that we expect at minimum, tens of thousands of responses to, and we're going to really put a lot behind this to push it out there and ensure that our members see it and take advantage of it. And it'll be out there for several weeks. The idea will be to have it sort of finished up at some time in January to give to the executive council subcommittees that are working on these different topics. We have to structure it in such a way that once the information is collected, whatever it is, through SurveyMonkey, Google Form, you guys know more about that than me probably, but that we ask the questions in a way that it's easy to record the responses and to be able to look at the responses that have been compiled and pretty easily determine, what the message is as a whole from the membership that's participating in those surveys. So that's kind of where we are right now. Would
that information be public when it comes out? I mean,
Yeah,
because
no.
people,
Oh, we'll be happy
people
to,
will
yeah.
want to see it.
No, we'll be happy to. Yeah, we'll absolutely. Once it's done in January. So, I mean, that's our target date is to have it done in January. So
January. Okay,
it's
I'm
coming.
writing that down in pen.
It's coming. And let me just give a little bit about this whole timeline. So our council subcommittee started working basically at the very beginning of September, the day after Labor Day. And reviewing bargaining positions, and then we had the rank and file stuff that was provided. That those 30 folks were awesome, the information they provided. So they've continued to meet and work once a week. The council is here this week. We're going to do this over the next couple of days. They're going to get a lot of input from our branch and state leaders, of course, at this national RAP session. The polling that we did is currently being put into digestible pieces to divide up for each of them. Then the survey would start, and the survey would come in, be done sometime in January. And then in early January, we've got another group of 30 others that we haven't chosen yet, rank and file members that are going to come in and do the same thing that the rank and file group did in September. So part of it is sort of having a cadence for these subcommittees as they work, that they're able to work through this information, with the idea being by the end of January, they will have gotten as much input as they possibly could. We, of course, as an entire executive council, will have discussed it, and we will have proposals drafted for February that we are actually going to pass across the table and be able to, know how the membership wants those prioritized. So there's a reason we didn't just do all this stuff at the same time in September. It's to allow it to come in and the council subcommittees to continue working on it.
All right. Before I hand it off, I got Capone, Greg, and then John. But like I said, so I don't think we'll be getting a date from you. Is that it? We're gonna. I mean,
yeah, you're not gonna get a date tonight, no. But there's gonna be,
because people are gonna be grilling
Chris, there's
me.
gonna be
Trust me.
multiple dates.
All right, I know this is good. We can't do everything at one. The local rally one day and whatever. But okay, because people are going to be asking me, and they're going to be giving me shit about this. All right, but I tried. So, but if you do, when you pick a date, I mean, would you come back on and talk about it when you pick a date?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, because we need, like I said, we need a date. That's all I need. I don't need anything else. Just give me the date, and then Boston will be flowing light blue. So, all right. I got Capone, then Greg, then John.
Hey, Brian, if you could give a message to all branch presidents, the MBAs, the stewards on how to get their members active. As we know, we have about, give and take, plus retirees, 260, 270,000 members. They bring one family member, they bring one customer. We could very easily have 1 million people out there. The problem is getting all these members active and wanting them to get involved. And that starts at MBAs down to the presidents, area stewards. What's a message that you would give to those members on how to get their members active?
The first thing I would say is we have to just be brutally honest and tell them the truth about where we are and the environment we are in and what's at risk. And that the best thing that we can do, what's at risk, whether that's in collective bargaining, the potential attacks that we could see, as we've seen with all these other federal employees, and just say, look, you don't have to do this every day, but there's power in us coming together and taking action, whatever that is, whether that's showing up at a rally, whether that's when we do calls to action, which we get incredible responses from, calling people, sending emails, sending letters, so on and so forth. I think it's just, it's really about, in a simple, concise way, educating them with the truth and the facts of what's at stake and what could possibly happen. That's really what it comes down to. And that the entire basis of organized labor is strength in numbers and solidarity. And, the more of us that are there, the stronger we are. It's no different than I'd see it as, the message we use with, say, the Letter Care Political Fund, a little bit from a whole lot of people makes us strong. I think the same's true with participation, especially when it comes to, an event like this. And then there's some people you can tell them they get a free T-shirt, and they like that. I'm serious. There's a piece of feeling, just belonging and that type stuff. While it might seem like sort of trivial to us, there's sort of a connective tissue there. So I think that's it, man. I think it's just telling them the truth and letting them know that the more of us there are, the better chance we have to fight off whatever negatives may come our way and to achieve and advance the things that we need to achieve.
Hey, Brian. Yeah, sorry, Chris.
You go right ahead. Greg, then Murphy.
I jumped in right there. Brian, I think it's time for the NALC, and you talk about what's going on with the 7,000-pound elephant in the White House, but I think we need to take a more proactive approach with our demands. And I don't know how true this was. The last contract, it was, well, we don't, and I don't even know if you said this, it was just heard through the grapevine, we don't want to let them know what our demands are. I don't see a problem with that because of the fact that, you talked about earlier how the public is on our side. I don't see that as a negative. I feel like that's the approach we need to take. We need to go on the attack more. And I think especially recently, we've gotten handed a few chips, which I think is to our advantage. And maybe you can speak on that for a minute. Everybody heard about the supervisor raise recently and the what they got, and I know it was tied to a NAPS lawsuit, but not everybody has to know that they got a raise for an organization that cries poor mouth. They gave the supervisors and the postmasters a raise. UPS came crawling back to us recently. Today, something came out about the USPS helping Amazon out with pickups now. So there's three chances we could say, all right, the private sector needs the public sector. And I feel like we don't do a good enough job using that to our advantage, where we could take that approach and really force it down the public's throat, but also the post office's throat, because we know they're not going to argue, they're not going to bargain in good faith, because they're scared of the big guy too. They're scared to move into the Department of Commerce because we'll probably still have a job, but I don't know if the upper postal management will have a job because someone's going to need to deliver it. So I think we need to really go on the offensive here, because we do have the public support. We do have, the chips now in our deck of cards. So I just want to know your opinion on that before I have a quick follow up about the LCP.
Yeah, I think there may be a little misunderstanding, throughout like the 4 times I've been here involved in bargaining. It's really never been that we tried to hide what we were trying to achieve or demands. It's more, we don't want, whoever's in the White House or the Congress or whoever sticking their nose in our collective bargaining. So in other words, we don't want them, because we get questions about it all the time, and the Postal Service does too. So it's really more about that. It was never trying to, kind of keep them away. I do think there's certainly no problem whatsoever, and we will be proactive about kind of going back to Margot's question about what our message would be in these actions that we do. That's something that's going to be straightforward. But I think it's also important to recognize that like collective bargaining is not a process where, you just walk in on day one and say, our demands are these specific numbers, and that's that. Do you agree to it or do you not? And they say no. And then you turn around and say, okay, well, we don't have an agreement. And that's the end of it. Like that. I mean, that's just simply not the way, that it works. And nor, that doesn't work that way in the private sector either, even though we're a lot different. So I think we would be very, very open about it. I will tell you something, Greg, you just mentioned that I think probably a lot of folks that are listening have seen in the news about the Postal Service and UPS getting back into a last mile delivery contract or agreement. This may turn out to be a really bad thing. And last year, the last mile agreement we had with UPS ended because the Postmaster General gave notice to withdraw from it. The reason he gave notice to withdraw from it is every single package we delivered for UPS, most of you guys are familiar, it's called SurePost, or it was, cost the Postal Service money to deliver. They never charged enough. There was no agreement reached with the previous Postmaster General and UPS because they were not willing to pay fair prices. We have a new Postmaster General that has come in, comes directly from one of our competitors. For the first time in the history of the Postal Service, we've hired a PMG directly from one of our competitors. He was on the board of FedEx for 15 years. And since he's been in office, UPS and FedEx, of course, have really been pushing to, enter into contracts that were beneficial to them. And which means if they're really beneficial to them, they're cheap and probably not beneficial to the Postal Service. I'm not drawing 100%, judgment that this is a bad thing, but it's something that we've definitely got to keep an eye on going forward. So I just wanted to kind of point that out, that there's a lot of uncertainty out there. We assume with postage, because it's true when it comes to just a customer, any of us mailing a package, that's in the Postal Service's interest because it's revenue. Some of these negotiated service agreements they have with big shippers and with these private shippers are not in the Postal Service's best interest. And that's one of the major issues that we face going forward, because it's more important than ever for the Postal Service to compete, because a larger percentage of revenue that the Postal Service has is attributed to package delivery. It's nearly 50%, and it's going to keep increasing. So, for our long-term sort of financial sustainability, a significant portion of that is tied to the revenue that's produced through competing for that parcel delivery. And of course, their long-term revenue and financial stability is part of what creates the collective bargaining agreement, the collective bargaining environment that we negotiate in.
But wouldn't you say that they are very poorly run when it comes to spending their money? I feel like, if somebody really looked at it, because there's only so long I can claim I'm broke before people start looking at, oh, they see me driving around in a brand new car. Well, I'm broke. They certainly give out raises and bonuses enough. So if they put a freeze there, or if they just gave a group of people, and I don't know I know it's tied to a lawsuit, but they gave a group of people a raise, and that's how it looks. They get a raise. And I believe you told us this at the Providence rap session last year that they lost $100 million in Article 8 grievances. So I could save the post office $100 million right there and just have their bosses say, well, follow Article 8. There's $100 million saved there.
Mhm.
Oh, you have a postmaster in I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate because I know we don't care about the postal's finances, but oh, you have a postmaster that's making $120,000 in an office of 6 people. Like, why not just like maybe they should, instead of worrying about what we're doing and the money that they're not giving us, maybe it's time to look where the losses really are, because we all know that the best bargain going for them right now is I use this step all the time. Table 2, step D is the best bargain they have right now. Those people make $56,000 a year. My vice president is table 2, step D. He's got to make another 30 in overtime just to live in Massachusetts. But then the supervisor, who he is a lot smarter than, has a base salary of $85,000 and has been here a year less. It doesn't make sense to me that this is how this organization is run. And I always thought, I'll close on this. I always thought the one positive of Doge was look at the books of the post office. You're going to be the whole public will be very surprised. The carriers will have a big smile on their faces, and every one of those that received a bonus would be out the door.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that the Postal Service overall is pretty poorly run in most areas. Every one of you guys sees that every day, and we've all seen that our entire careers. So, is there significant improvements or changes that should be made? Absolutely, in terms of the way they do things operationally. The bigger problem, though, is revenue. It's mail volume. It's what's incoming. When you look out long term, there's just simply not enough to cut, not enough efficiencies to gain, whatever word they use, to offset what has happened over the years with revenue. Now, parcels have grown, and that's brought revenue back to some degree. But the danger here is, we don't, all we have to do is go back about 16 years and we can see what the danger is. And the danger is that you have a significant loss in revenue. And yes, you got the Postal Service out there wasting all this money and they're not paying us enough. But all of a sudden that revenue goes down and it just triggers opportunities for people to try to do bad things. Like when they wanted to go to 5-day delivery, they wanted to convert all the deliveries to centralized delivery. So, for us, the things that are beneficial is, of course, to the extent we can get them to do things better operationally, which is hard to do. Everybody that's a shop steward understands that. But at the same time, there's got to be a path forward to grow revenue so that we don't get in a position or I guess make a situation worse where you've got expenses that are far higher than revenue. You don't have the ability to cut those expenses down to where the revenue, the money that's coming in for postage, at least comes close to balancing out. That creates opportunities for people that want to do things to harm the Postal Service, like, our competitors, like UPS and FedEx. They stand to gain from killing the Postal Service. And ultimately, whether it's our dealings with them on Capitol Hill, it's their actions that we see, the way they have dealt over the last several months with the administration, the way they've tried to approach trying to bargain a new agreement with the Postal Service for us to deliver their parcels. Ultimately, they have to gain by our loss, and those are sort of the forces, that are at play. And it's definitely a piece of our bargaining. And look, ultimately, the reason that we have always been involved in trying to do things on Capitol Hill to improve, the policy changes and stuff like that to improve the Postal Service's long-term financial picture is real simple. I mean, it's job security, of course, but the better financial position they're in, the better opportunity we have to achieve the things that we want in bargaining. That's just a fact. That's a fact in the private sector. The more money a company has, the better opportunity the union has to achieve some of the things they want to achieve in bargaining. So,
Yeah.
It's a constant thing that we now have just basically for 16, 17 years since a recession, that we've had to pay really, really close attention to. And, whether we want it to be a part of it or we don't, the fact of the matter is that it has a significant impact and we have to be involved on that front.
I think one of the things, right, is we have to be cautious of the price of stamps going up. Price of stamps go up, less people use us. The NELC activist newsletter, I think it's every fall. There's always the statistics.
Mhm.
And the statistics everyone wants to know is the ratio of city carriers to management, where in the 1990s was one manager for every 25 city carriers, and now it's one manager for every 7 carriers. Um, I feel like this is why I'm like people are like, oh, Brian Renfroe was the problem. No, the entire NELC structure was the problem since the beginning. Because when we went from one manager for every 7 up to one to every 14, that should have been a red alert. We should have came out to the public and been like, yo, the Postal Service has doubled management. That's the price of stamps right there. Like, in this is something going forward. Now we have tripled. Management has tripled, and we're crying poor. And I think with the contract rallies, I don't agree with the whole idea of putting fight like hell. I think we go right to the customers, right? And be like, there's one manager for every 7 workers. Is that how your workplace runs? And I don't think anyone will be against that. I think every customer will be like, what? That seems like a bloated management. I think we need a direct in the end, the USPS management is the problem, right? So if we go out there and we held signs, commercials, radio ads, everything, social media, and we point out how bloated the top is on the post office, and I think the customers will really appreciate that because I don't think anyone actually understands because all they see is city carriers delivering their mail at 10 o'clock, and that cannot continue that much longer before they start eroding their trust in us. Because it's like, why would they want to get their Amazon package or their IRS check at 10 o'clock at night left in a mailbox where it could get stolen the next overnight and they don't know who put it in there? And then the other thing is, um, the postal record goes out to every NELC member. We could easily have put a survey, a contract survey inside the postal record centerfold and had an envelope to mail it back. That could have been done ahead of time. I feel like that's what other unions do as well, not just text alert, because you're gonna end up getting a text on your phone and it's gonna be a random number. And like me, I don't answer. I usually just swipe and delete off the iPhone. Um, so I think there's a lot of improvements the NELC has to do, and I feel like moving forward, if we are talking about I'm step D. I don't think there's 30 years left inside the Postal Service or nor the NELC. And if we're serious, this contract is going to shape the next 50 years of our union. And it would be great if we could reach out to other unions and help get them on board with actually moving forward with contract campaigns and contract rallies. Because if we keep doing the same thing, we just hire outside staffers and economics folks to run the books. I don't think that's a good strategy. We see the teachers unions across the country. We see the nurses unions. We see the Teamsters. We see UAW. If we could, as a member of the AFL-CIO, like tap them on the shoulder and, hey, can we borrow some of your staffers that have won serious contracts, and sit down and have a roundtable? I think that's very vital. And I think a lot of people, there was 65 people in this Zoom chat at one point, and they're like, let's talk about the contract. I don't think there's a point in talking about the contract until the membership actually realizes that the NALC National is serious about bringing us up to a living wage and contracts. So I'm on the fence on the future of the NALC because Build the Funding NALC is going around now. They have 3,000 contacts, and Helio Goze up there in Washington State was phone banking a bunch of supporters. And it seemed like every other person since signing up for BFN 2 years ago has moved on to another organization, another employer, because a lot of them just can't afford to work for the post office. And I was reading the phone banking database that Vigilio Goze typed up, and it's just like literally every other person quit. And that's just one little city out of one small sample, and this must be happening across the country. So hopefully the other executive council members and other branch presidents in larger branches are listening to this, and they actually feel that it is time to actually start listening to the members. Because the other thing, I was listening to your podcast, Fight Like Hell, on my way home today, and I started getting angry. I get angry because we have a rank and file committee making um, going forward with this contract. But how is they going forward with contract negotiation demands and stuff like that when they haven't even asked the entire membership? So it seems like a very flawed structure that has been established. But that's just me. It's my thoughts. I'm kind of burnt out. It's been a long 4 years working for the post office, coming in during COVID, getting kicked to the can with the contract, walking into a constant toxic work environment, and then going to the grocery store and having to figure out which pound of meat costs the less. Do I pay the one that's 7.85 a pound, or do I pay the one that's 7.64 a pound? Um, so yeah, anyone that's listening that has a leadership position, you owe it to your members, the labor movement. And I'm not going to buy it the federal government's going to come in and crush us. I think we're going to do it to ourselves because there's been 30 years, 40 years of us sitting on the sidelines. We're not even standing on the sidelines. So Renfroe, like, I know you're not going to announce that you're running, but we all know you're running. No one's going to give up a $300,000 job to go carry mail again. Like, it's crazy. So just please, for the love of God, for the love of the labor movement, just put the fight back into the fight like hell. So I'll just leave it at that. We could open up to Greg and Capone.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah,
I got.
John, let me just, I just want to be sure that there's not a misunderstanding here. The survey that I talked about, we're going to deliver. The survey will be available likely through the members only portal. We'll probably put a QR code in the postal record. It's going to be available at every single active member. And it's going to be very timely too. It'll be in advance of collective bargaining beginning. It will not be done solely by text. The polling that's done nowadays is done by text. Polling for many years was done by phone call. And if someone chooses not to answer the text or doesn't know what it is, that's perfectly fine. That happens in every poll that's ever done. They're professional pollsters. That's what they do. The reason we do not put a survey to like fill out and mail back in the postal record is because it is almost prohibitively expensive to tally that information when it comes back in. Someone would have to sit there and manually go through it. So the idea is to put it together, as I talked about a little bit earlier, in a format, format that is easily collected electronically, and then it's easily digestible by topic based on which of our executive council members it needs to go to. The other unions you mentioned, I think it's really good. I can assure you in this, everything that we do, particularly the public stuff that we start doing that we've talked about a lot here tonight in February. There'll be a lot of involvement from other unions if we do things here in DC and then also around the country. I mean, solidarity, one of the things that I guess a positive outcome that comes from, so many negatives in the labor movement. I mean, look, this year we've seen the biggest attack on organized labor in the history of the United States of America. More people have been impacted by actions this administration has taken, like against our brothers and sisters that are represented by the American Federation of Government Employees, a union we're really close to down the street. But one of the things that comes from difficult times is often a strengthened spirit of solidarity. And we've seen that in the history of our union, and we've certainly seen that in the history of the labor movement. So that'll definitely be a part of it.
All right. I got a question. It's about revenue.
Mhm.
First, you just kind of blew my mind about SurePost. I thought by law we had to make a profit off of every single package we handled. So but that's not what I'm talking about. That's related. Wow. Um, so one thing that came up, we met once early. You may not remember me because it was 2019. I didn't stand out, but I asked a question. It was related to postal banking. And I asked, that, obviously, the number that came out, I think it was a senator from New York State who pointed out that it was It would get us, it would generate around $9 billion a year. And for those of you who don't know what it would do, a lot of areas, mostly in the inner cities or in rural areas, there's no banking at all. Or if you want to get, this is not a new weird idea too. This existed from 1911 to 1963, I believe. Postal banking was normal. Everyone had it. It would do cash checking, small interest loans, small things like that, and it would generate a lot of money. Then the government did away with it because big banks, Wall Street doesn't like doing that. They want to make a profit. And if we're doing it as a service, it's bad for them. But this could give us $9 billion. And right now, we obviously need the money. And I saw some people in the chat were making it up that we can't talk about this. This is never going to happen. And I want to point out to the Social Security Fairness Act that was passed recently. That was something we have been fighting. That was if you had a married family member who was like a teacher, a firefighter, postal worker, you would get whacked on taxes. Your benefits wouldn't pay out because they thought you were double dipping. That was a 30-year fight. And we won it recently because we kept coming up over and over and over, and eventually we got it. So, the APWU did an amazing job pushing postal banking around 2021, around that time. But, and you said once we get rid of the pre-funding mandate, we're going to do postal banking. I'm waiting, Brian. I know what's going on, but where are we going? Why aren't we joining with the APWU? Why aren't we making postal banking? This could alleviate a massive source of problems. Our LCPF, we have 3 legislative priority deal, and I think they're great. I think we need that. But why are we not pushing postal banking, which could alleviate so many problems we're facing right now?
The so the short answer is there's zero desire in the United States Congress to modify existing law to allow the Postal Service to really get into offering financial services.
There's some. There is some.
There's zero interest from the majority of Congress to make it happen.
All you need is one. I'm just saying. I know how this works, but all right. Yeah.
We look, we're very close with the APWU and as well as the other postal unions. And this is something that, of course, the APWU has always taken an interest in because their members would be doing the work, of course. And we are 100% supportive of any effort or expansion of services like that would be beneficial to the Postal Service. Now, I don't know, Chris, where your $9 billion came from, but I will tell you that if it would bring $9 billion a year in revenue, the folks at the Postal Service would be beating down Congress's door every single day to try to get them to do it. So that I don't know about what the number is, but I feel pretty confident in saying it wouldn't quite be that much. Look, there's a reality here too in the environment that we're in. Who's in control of both Congresses? The idea of the Postal Service being able to offer a service that the big banks offer under this administration with the majorities in the House and the Senate is just simply, that's not a reality right now. But of course, you mentioned the Social Security Fairness Act, which is a really good point. Of course, sometimes opportunities come from unexpected places, and we continually look for that type of stuff. And should an opportunity present itself, we'd be very supportive of this. There's all kinds of stuff, and we're about to start another test with the Census Bureau. With us doing census work, we did a kind of small scale test on this about a decade ago. So, there's so many more things we could do with our network of delivery and our network of physical locations. And I think postal banking is a good example of that. And hopefully there's an opportunity to do it at some point in the future. But unfortunately, there's not much of an opportunity given the current circumstances.
Would we have to bargain that work from the if we were doing service? Would that be bargained in? Because I know everyone at my job always talks about what's going on there. Do you want to give us an update? Do you know anything about it? Because it's rumors, it's billions of dollars that could be given to us. Do you know anything about? I mean, obviously you probably would know. But what's the update on that with
the census stuff?
Yeah.
There's a couple of different concepts that that letter carriers would do. Some of it is the easiest way to put it is some of it will be during our line of travel. Some of it might be on a voluntary basis after, completion of a route. Some of it, might be quantified in some different way. The things that we've had discussions with them about are mostly, we'll do the work. We're absolutely interested in doing the work, but it's more about, how does it, how do we incorporate it into like our existing structure in CBA? And in other words, we know what collecting and delivering mail is in the application of our CBA to that stuff. The question really is how do we incorporate this piece in? And that's still kind of under discussion because the Postal Service is still discussing with the census folks exactly how the census people want this to work. So it's not, at the point of starting anytime soon, but, the engagement has been pretty good. And just speaking really generally, I think it's a positive thing. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to do stuff with other government agencies. I mean, we think back to the pandemic when the Postal Service packaged and mailed and we delivered all those COVID tests. That's just one example. I think there's a lot of opportunities out there, and the census work is just one piece of it. So all the details are not hammered out yet. Once the census people figure out exactly what they want, then what we will do is look at the work and, we'll sit down with them, and chances are we may end up having to do, some sort of MOU to make some things clear. But for the most part, it'll just be work like delivering and collecting mail in terms of the way our CBA is applied, just a little bit of a different kind of work.
All right. I think it's Capone, Margot, then Murphy. And Capone's off screen. So, Margot, if you want to go in, then Murphy.
Okay, great. So, this is kind of going back to a conversation that we were kind of having earlier, but I wanted to ask, during the last contract negotiations, there were certain branches that wanted to like participate in a contract campaign and have some rallies, and they were faced with pushback, from national or from whoever, and they were told that the outside pressure would hurt their negotiations. I know that we brought up earlier that like Congress might get involved or what have you. But it seems like having you here, it seems like you're more interested in like working, having a contract campaign rally. So what's different about this year compared to contracts past?
There's a couple things. The first is the Postal Service is different. Obviously, there's new leadership at the Postal Service. He's still settling in. Postmaster General Steiner, let's say, he's not really made any major changes. As I look forward to next year, the deputy PMG, who's been NALC's bargaining counterpart for a long time, I don't know if he's going to be here next year. So that's one thing. I think it's fair to say and expect that the opportunity for us through the type of bargaining relationships we've had for a long time, bargaining in good faith on both sides, to reach an agreement that's fair to letter carriers and to send out for ratification is probably not great, to be very honest about it, next year. So I think it's just there's a greater need for that reason to harness some of the support that we would have from the public, for example. I think that's really the primary reason. The other thing is we historically, and Congress we have kept them as far away from anything related to our collective bargaining as we, even if they were well intended, frankly, because now most of them were not, but even if they were. And we also are in the middle of, kind of engaging them on what is a massive issue for us. And most of you listening, will know this, and that is the Postal Service is just continual day after day after day failure to comply with our collective bargaining agreement. The Postal Service Office of Inspector General, the OIG, a lot of you may know OIG agents out in the field try to get letter carriers in trouble. They also have a group here in DC that does studies and audits and all sorts of things. They're the watchdog over the Postal Service. They are, I think, nearly finished with an audit on the Postal Service's grievance payments, which creates an opportunity for us potentially to maybe use some influences that we've not been able to use before to pressure the Postal Service to comply with our agreement. We've had a lot of communication with the OIG about this audit. What it's going to say is that the Postal Service pays an awful lot of money in grievance remedies for NALC contract violations. And hopefully what it recommends is that they need to do something to figure out how the hell to comply with our agreement. So we've been engaging, because that was coming, engaging with the leadership on certain congressional committees about the possibility of getting them to, along with that report, to add some pressure. So that's kind of like the environment's it's kind of different. I mean, it's ever evolving, and I think each time we have to assess it. One last thing on this OIG thing. The report was nearly done. The government is shut down. Therefore, the Postal Service OIG a couple of weeks ago is also basically shut down. So the report's not coming while the government is shut down. So those two things, we don't know what's, it's different over at the Postal Service, and then, it's just more stuff floating around that's out there, and just trying to leverage the positives against the difficulties in the public, and those type people are important allies for us.
I kind of want to change course real quick, unless Greg wants to ask it. But I'll ask it. If you were living in New York right now, who you be voting for?
He stole my question.
Yeah, sorry.
I don't know. I didn't really watch the debate. I did see a clip of the Saturday Night Live skit of the debate, which was pretty good.
I think we were trying to get a feel for your politics. It was like our way of like seeing like left, center. I don't know
It's
what.
2025. This will be a very lighthearted answer, whatever you give. So go for it.
I'm kind of like I'm from Mississippi, so I'm probably a Southern Democrat. Like, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I'd vote for Cuomo. I don't.
No, nobody should vote for him.
Very good.
And I don't
That's
think I'd
probably
vote
the best
for
we're gonna
the
get.
guy in the hat, whatever his name
All right.
is.
There you go. Mandani.
If I lived in New Jersey or Virginia, I would 1,000%
Yep.
vote for Abby Spanberger or Mikey Sherrill. They're great friends, and
I believe they both won.
awesome. That's great news. I didn't know
All
that.
right.
Really
So
happy
the
to
real
hear
question
that.
I have is, the health plans are up for renewal, and the trans population, the trans workers, literally just lost their coverage. Why is the NALC very silent on this portion of city letter carriers?
I don't know if silent is the right word. We heavily engage every single year throughout the year with OPM. The truth is, for many, many years, whoever was president on a year-to-year basis, the Office of Personnel Management that governs our health plan, they make changes. And one of the changes that was initially proposed was to eliminate this coverage. We went back to OPM and tried to just reduce it and make some minor changes, and they just simply wouldn't accept it. And by law, there's really nothing we can do about it aside from that interaction with OPM. I will tell you point blank, I think it is absolutely disgusting. Rarely in history has an administration dictated cuts or reductions in health benefits. Mostly it's been, hey, add coverage for this, add coverage for that. We have obviously a number of transgender members around the country, many of which I've had the opportunity to have interaction with and discuss over the last few years the benefits that we added, which were significant. And it's just it's a terrible thing. And look, this is a cliche to some degree, but it's 100% true. elections have consequences. And unfortunately, this is one of those consequences. And if there was something we could do to change it, I assure you we would. But the only thing, frankly, that we can do to change it really is an election that's going to happen in 2028.
Hey, Brian, just going back to John, sorry, were you finished? I didn't mean to cut you off. Just going back to the letter carrier political fund. Is it true that if, just as an example, if I quit the post office tomorrow and decided to run for Congress against my Lori Trahan, and my platform was 80% pro NALC, pro post office bills, would the NALC use the money in the letter carrier political fund to give to somebody running against an incumbent?
For you, probably.
But for any, I'm
No,
just using
I'm
me.
joking, Greg.
But
Let me. Do we support those running against incumbents? Yes. So we look at it a couple different ways. Incumbents that support us and have demonstrated they support us, we very rarely go against. Very rarely. We have no reason to. They support us. When it comes to supporting challengers, even if it is someone that has not been supportive of us, we ask a real question of, is it a possibility for them to win? Because if they can't win, it's just not a good use of our PAC money. I mean, it's a little more complicated than that, but in a nutshell, we support those that support us. When it comes to challengers, it really comes down to that. I mean, I don't want to just throw PAC money away on someone that's not a legitimate candidate. There are, however, a couple exceptions to that. I'm not going to mention names, but I will tell you that we have supported a couple of people over time around the country in certain congressional districts that probably didn't really have a realistic chance to win, but we supported them financially because they were members of the NALC running for office.
is there anything that I don't know how to phrase this. I'm trying to think. Can you tell us why that HR 70, this was probably just for Chris and I, Catherine Clark, who spoke at our convention and is number 2 in the House for the Democrats,
House Minority Whip.
House Minority Whip, and Hakeem Jeffries, who's obviously Majority Whip, they didn't sign on to HR 70. We've never really got an explanation other than, oh, their leadership, they're not supposed to favor a bill. But I would think it'd be the opposite, especially if I assume they both get a healthy check from the letter carrier political fund. Do you know of a reason why? Is that the reason why they wouldn't hop on that co-sponsor?
Yeah, that's exactly why. The leadership, it's not that they never do, but they pretty rarely co-sponsor legislation. I will tell you, Whip Clark and Leader Jeffries, I know them both very well. They're very good friends of NELCs. They are 100%, both of them, supportive of letter carriers, and they absolutely would do anything that was necessary to move one of those bills. Let me give you an example. Let's say once there's still this rule that if a bill gets 290 co-sponsors, it can be scheduled for a floor vote. If Hakeem, for example, there were 289, they needed one more, he would do it for that reason. But they just don't the Republicans are the same way on both sides of the aisle. They don't co-sponsor legislation and leadership typically.
And just to close, there has been no other movement with the executive order other than that Washington Post article back in March.
Nope. That whole sequence of several days, they initially planned to do it on a Friday afternoon at 3:00. It didn't happen. They then planned to do it on Monday at 5:00. It didn't happen. And the amount of political pressure I think that we were able to place through our friends on the Republican side of the aisle in the House, communicating to the administration that, look, you do something like this, hurts the Postal Service. You're going to piss off a lot of people in my district. I'm not going to get reelected. That's what politicians ultimately care about. So it doesn't mean that there won't be further attacks. I don't think it's going to come in the same way they intended to do that executive order.
Got a question from the audience here. Matt Copson asked this question, and I'll have a follow-up to it. This question one was, if the post office was broke last year, what gives you confidence that you could negotiate a better contract this time around? Would it? And my question, would it include a rally on Sunday, February 22nd?
What gives me confidence that we can negotiate a better contract? I'm not sure I have confidence that we can reach agreement with the Postal Service on a better contract for reasons I talked about earlier. I think it's a situation where, it's just like any collective bargaining that has interest arbitration as the, what resolves impasses is, we put our best case together, and a part of building that case and building, that support are the things that we're going to talk about that Chris really wants to have, that we've been talking about that Chris really wants to happen on February 22nd. I will say this about the Postal Service's financial condition. It evolves, in other words, the details of it change year to year, and it's not good. I'm not going to sugarcoat it in terms of just looking long term. It's not significantly different than it was last year. And then, of course, the pandemic, like it did for many other for the government, for many other businesses, created a lot of uncertainty. So I think the financial circumstances around the Postal Service in terms of our bargaining and the case the Postal Service could put on is not a whole lot different than it was last time as far as its like bottom line impact on bargaining. So, it might be that the outcome of bargaining through interest arbitration this time, which again is, I don't have a lot of confidence we're going to get to agreement because of the uncertainty of the Postal Service. Hopefully we can, get the prioritization of things right based on what the membership really is looking for through all this stuff that we're doing over the next few months. But it's not, I've never said I have more confidence than I did in collective bargaining the last time because, it's a difficult environment. But we're going to use every tool we have for sure.
All right. Capone, you had a question? And you're on mute. I can't lip read. There you go. All right.
All right.
Then you just muted yourself.
I think you muted yourself.
Yep, you're on a dial-up modem. Do you have Wi-Fi? Oh, there we go. All right.
All right. So we're talking.
Capone, we lost your audio again. Your dial-up modem connection.
I could step in if.
What do you think Capone would want to say?
Hold on.
Capone, we're here.
Let's try it again. Hold on. I should be all set.
Okay. All right. And
All right.
Take 3. Action.
All right. We're talking about the financial situation of the post office. Brian, I'm probably going to get the arbitrator wrong. I may get the year wrong. I'm sure you'll know it off the top of your head. 07 Fleischer, I believe. In regards to the financial situation of the post office does not affect our pay. And that was when the post office was making money and they said, that doesn't mean we have to pay you more. Is this being brought up during our arbitration? It seems like that argument works when they want it to work. Financial situation. Are we bringing this argument to the table? Are we expounding on the fact that has happened?
I think I got the gist of it. Yes, it's just like a lot of arguments that happen, even in national level rights arbitration for like interpretive issues. They're going to argue it the way that benefits them. We argue it the way that benefits us. And then it's, ultimately up to the arbitrator to decipher it. So, and honestly, historically, where the arbitrators have landed is you mentioned Arbitrator Fleischley's award, which was a pretty significant award. And then on the other side of the coin, where what we've been with the Post Service now for the last 15 plus years is when they were, losing a lot of money. The arbitrators absolutely have considered it, but they have not really gone too far in either direction. In other words, they've remained sort of, maybe recognize, yeah, the Post Service is making money, the Postal Service is losing money, but that's not been, necessarily the thing that the arbitrator hung their hat on one way or the other. They've kind of come back to the middle of that argument. As far as when it comes up, that's the primary thing the Postal Service argues. I mean, when you're arguing for something, you're arguing on one hand against it's a legal argument against a comparability standard in the law. But if you're saying, yeah, the union wants this and it's going to cost $5 billion. If you're the Postal Service, of course, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is we don't have any money. And that's, so we have to, we don't go into interest arbitration with it being, part of our case to talk about their finances, but we absolutely are prepared to be sure that we are able to, number one, respond to what they put on the table, whether that's in just negotiations or an interest arbitration. Number two, to ensure that the arbitrator understands our view of their finances, because shockingly, the Postal Service tends to poor mouth a little bit, even when the situation is not that great overall.
But would the arbitrator say, well, why are you losing so much money? If you got a pretty good deal on this table too, you're kind of top heavy. Why don't you kind of look in the mirror and say, why are you guys losing so much money? Is that something that would even be asked, or does he just accept their word for it?
No, no, that's absolutely the type conversation that happens. I mean, then
but they keep doing it. They keep losing money and they keep staying top heavy.
Well, no, but then you get into this. Okay, you hire people and 50% of them leave. So you waste X amount of money by hiring people and onboarding them and training them, and they leave, and they don't leave
because you're not
you
paying
don't
them
pay
enough.
them enough. And like you go down that road and we quantify what every piece of that costs. That's sort of the nature of the discussion back and forth that happens kind of throughout the bargaining process. I mean, it gets into all sorts of areas, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Brian,
Can we ask an arbitrator to look into the finances or ask an independent audit to actually dive into the finances of the post office to see where this money, if it is actually being lost the way they say it is?
We go
Get
way
in those
deep.
books.
Yeah, that's what the OIG does. I mean, the Postal Service's finances are as transparent or more transparent than any of the financial records in the United States. So yeah, they will do elaborate presentations. Our folks, I mean, they're doing it right now. Our economists that dig deep into that stuff. That's kind of, we get into pretty granular details in terms of the way each side presents, our view of their financial picture. For many years for us, and this is still true to a degree, it was always, yeah, they lost X amount of money last year, and we break down certain pieces of it, but a lot of it's due to this legislative mandate. And, you should consider and reward letter carriers, because letter carriers, as the union, are the people up here pushing to make these legislative changes. Basically NALC is the reason why the pre-funding mandate that we talked about for all those years went away. I mean, we did that. That doesn't happen without us, and that should bring value. So like all this stuff is part of the conversation.
Is the Siegel report money is that a lost cause at this point? It's never happening because of Mr. Trump?
No, I wouldn't say it's a lost cause. The Biden administration really made it more difficult.
Can you just maybe explain what that is? People may not know what that is, because that's a big deal. Congressman Lynch, my guy, did this. So yeah.
Yeah, it is, Chris. That's a good point. And we're going to have legislation introduced about it soon. So in a nutshell, the way when the Postal Service sets money aside for postal employees, including us, our retirement, that money is set in accounts that the United States government, Office of Personnel Management, who administers retirement, they keep the money because eventually they pay the retirement benefits. The Postal Service over the years has set aside nearly $400 billion for employee retirement. Prior to 1970, the post office was called the Post Office Department. It was a full-blown government agency, not the Postal Service as we know it today. It was taxpayer funded, so on and so forth. In 1970, because letter carriers did not have collective bargaining rights, primarily, letter carriers and then postal employees all over the country went on strike, starting with the letter carriers at Branch 36 in New York City. One of the results of that strike was a law, the Postal Reorganization Act, which gave us the full collective bargaining rights we've had since. But it also created the Postal Service as this independent federal agency of the government that was self-funded. So OPM, all this money that the Postal Service has paid in is basically kind of commingled with all the money that the rest of the government has paid into their retirement accounts. So there's a lot of accounting that takes place. There's X amount of money from this agency for these employees and so on. The problem that was discovered back in 2010 initially is in the way that OPM accounted for all the money the Postal Service had set aside. And it should seem pretty simple. For people that worked prior to 1970, when the post office was a government agency, a full government agency, that should be the responsibility of the federal government, their retirement. For the time people worked after 1970, that's the Postal Service's responsibility. For example, someone gets hired in 1955, they work for 30 years. Their first 15 years, from 55 to 70, those retirement costs should be the responsibility of the Post Office Department. From 70 to 85 should be the Postal Service. It should be simple. It's not. And basically what was found in 2010 initially, the reason we call this Siegel is that the Postal Regulatory Commission had a company called the Siegel Company do a study on this. They found that OPM, through this miscalculation, had overcharged the Postal Service tens of billions of dollars for retirement costs. Now, why is this important? Because what the Siegel report recommended and what needs to happen is they need to recalculate it, because if they recalculate it, the Postal Service's retirement accounts end up overfunded. By law, when their retirement accounts are overfunded, the money it's the overfunded amount on a schedule is automatically transferred into a fund to pay for retiree health benefits in the future. So the net impact would be that long term, it would save them tens of billions of dollars. Maybe more importantly for us in the immediate future, it would save them at this point probably upwards of $3 billion every year in simply amortization costs that they have to pay for that overpayment, which benefits everything. It benefits, I'd love to go to the bargaining table and they have $3 billion more than they have today, right? So this is something that we have tried through the end of the Obama administration, the first Trump administration, the Biden administration, to get the president, the White House, to simply tell the Office of Personnel Management, redo this, use standard private sector accounting practices. The Biden administration issued an opinion after we really pressed them on this last spring, that basically said they don't think they have the authority to do it, even though a postal reform bill that passed in 2006, a bipartisan bill, we believe gave them explicit authority for OPM to do this. So back to answer your question, Greg, basically that made it more difficult to just get the president to do it. I haven't given up on getting Trump to do it. If you tell him he can save the Postal Service billions of dollars with a stroke of a pen and, he can sign it and hold it up like he likes to do, great, knock yourself out. but more likely this is going to happen legislatively. So we are going to have legislation introduced here. They got to get the government back open, and the House of Representatives they got to come back to work. They haven't been there in 2 months. To introduce legislation that would make this change at OPM. It'll probably be a bill introduced by a Republican, more than likely one that works on our stuff because of his, as a result of his place on one of the committees of jurisdiction over the Postal Service. So
is that
haven't given
Fitzpatrick?
up, but it's more likely going to have to happen legislatively.
Is that Fitzpatrick?
No, it would. I mean, he would do it if we ask him, but he does a lot already. So likely the one we're working with is Pete Sessions from Texas. He's the chair of the Government Operations Subcommittee of the Committee on Oversight and Reform. He's a Republican member. He's got a good relationship with his ranking member, Congressman Renfroe from Maryland. So that's the ones we're pitching. We're trying to get the right time when they come back to, get that. Because and a Republican led, getting a Republican introduced, it's just simply a matter of strategy. In this Congress, that could change, and depending on what happens in the election next fall.
So speaking about the bargaining table, I think that we've got like pretty much 2 questions left before we wrap up here. But I'll let Chris make the final decision on that. But I wanted to ask, so first off, are we going to see USPS's first offer in negotiations?
Yeah. I mean, we'll make it known they probably won't have an offer until way long time at the end. That's kind of the way it works. They don't come to the table with an offer. I would say their first quote offer last time probably came, I don't know, certainly after, it was after the mediation period. So they sort of go piece by piece. That may change again next year. They may walk in with a piece of paper and throw it on the table and say, here's what we'll do. I don't know. But yes, there will be more communication about that. I honest to God, I mean, last round of bargaining, that is something that we could have absolutely communicated. But we didn't ever get to a point where they were like, this is my final offer, basically. But there's not really a first offer. They may come in and say, I'll spend $2.8 billion more than we spent on the last contract or whatever that number is. But that can be hard. That doesn't necessarily equate to like X amount of raise and so on and so forth. But I think in a general sense, the answer to your question is there will be more information about what they're willing to do or not do than there has been in the past because of that different environment.
Great. I think that would sort of go a long way in building trust among the rank and file, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm looking forward to seeing it. And so the second question that I have is the UAW and the UPS Teamsters have agreed to line up the expiration date of their contracts so that they expire at midnight on April 30th, 2028, in time for May Day, to support a general strike and solidarity between unions, and they've called on other unions to do the same. So would you support setting the expiration date for our upcoming contract to midnight on April 30th to show solidarity between unions?
I would absolutely be interested in the solidarity between unions. I've actually talked to one Sean about that. I think the only problem for us is the looking toward that day in 2028. But we've had a lot of discussion about that at the AFL about the extent the large national contracts like ours that we could line up to do that annually, and figure out a year and figure out a day. And it's almost like we went back to the history of how Labor Day became Labor Day, and it's that first weekend in September, trying to sort of set that with contract expiration. So I think it's a really good creative idea, and obviously, be interested in. It's just a matter of if it lines up with ultimately what's best for letter carriers, which always comes first.
All right, great. That's positive to hear. Capone, and then myself for the wrap up.
So, Brian, mine's going to be more contractual. The bane of my existence, the return to work checklists. I want to present my argument with you because I really feel it's a form of harassment, and I wanted to see what the NALC has internally talked about that. The fact that you can have a carrier who has 10 years, no problem with attendance, never calls out once, and he will be brought into the office to be given a return to checklist. It's almost a closeted way of harassing us to not use that benefit. And then they are then arguing the point, well, we've taught them the elm. That first question you go into PDI is, do you know this elm? Their argument is that we do it every single time you call in sick. And how the NELC has not looked at that as it's a form of harassing us. You can't take all this stuff when you do an official discussion, yet you found an end around to do it every single time we call in now. Has that been something that's been batted around the NELC nationally?
Yes, it is. We've explored some types of changes in bargaining to the ELM language. But to be honest, I think and we've not gotten to agreement, but I think the best way to address it is probably through JCAM language for us. I mean, if you look at Article 10 of the JCAM, the way it's lined up and it's got certain sections of the ELM, and as opposed to trying to change something in the ELM that they're going to look for another way to work around, which is effectively what they're doing here, is just explicitly right about what happens. I mean, there's danger in trying to define, like at what point, whether it's a number of absences or what level of severity it is that someone has to start to go through that process. I mean, obviously, you're never going to be able to negotiate away their ability to do something like that. If somebody's, been out 30 times in the last 2 months or whatever. Right. But I do think there's like guardrails and things that we could at minimum give our shop stewards something to argue when it's evident they're abusing it. That's like what I've tried to, because I don't know that like what's in the ILM, if they did what it was intended to do, is broken. I think it's a fact that they use it to try to they try basically abuse it to, as you said, try to sort of create this level of I don't know if you want to call it intimidation or what, but like something that would prevent them from doing that and give us the ability to make that argument when it's evident they are.
Well, yeah, especially if they're using it every time, it is harassment at this point.
No, it is. Yeah,
Right,
but whether the word is harassment or whatever word we want to use, like the point is that's not what the language is intended to do for most of the people that they're putting through this process.
Brian, but it's another reason why this place has become so undesirable to some of these people, and they wondered why they lost all that money. Is like, yeah, I think some people would just say, I'll accept a lower pay, maybe, I didn't get the contract I wanted, but every day I got to show up to work, and this person who doesn't know anything is behind me saying, oh, you did this wrong, you did that wrong. By the way, you took a left turn, you should have took a right turn on the scanner. It grows tiresome, and I think that's what the membership grows tired of, is like, like I said, like, okay, I didn't get the $45 an hour, but I don't need them on my ass every day. And especially if it's someone like, I talk to Capone almost every day, and it's like, yeah, I have my problem children in my office too, but like when Bill Lynch was in my office, if Bill Lynch called in sick, they're gonna bring Bill Lynch in for a welcome back letter. He knows the elm. He knows that he's not abusing sick leave. It's a waste of everybody's time. It's a way to intimidate us yet again, when the managers don't know how to do anything correctly, and they're gonna tell us how that we're supposed to follow the M. I show them the M39. I have supervisors say, "What's that? What is that?" I go, "You don't know what the M39 is?" No. That's amazing to me that we're at that. These are the people in charge of us. God forbid if something happens with someone on the road, like serious, it's like thank God there's a few good ones out there that can handle it, but it's just another example of enough is enough, you know?
No, you're 100% right. And, I think about this, what James brought up. I mean, years ago, restricted sick leave was such a crazy thing that, someone called in sick 3 times and, whatever span of time. And it's just, it comes down to a management culture, honestly. And we all know what that culture is. It's terrible. It is disrespectful. And frankly, it's a bunch of unqualified people that are not given the knowledge. They're not given the type of training that they need. And they also are motivated by um, their bosses, let's call them, whether that's station managers, postmasters, POOMs, district managers on up. The things that they're motivated by are totally wrong. They're certainly not the things that are best for letter carriers. They're not even near the things that are best for the Postal Service. It's just a very convoluted mess, and it's such a cultural it's a cultural problem, and it's such a big country. It's just really difficult to change it. And for us as a union, I think it comes back to our sort of core mission of bargaining a contract and then enforcing it firmly. In a lot of ways, that's a reason why we exist. But it's worse than it's ever been in terms of the things that local managers can control, the BS that our members have to put up with, and they're just like this egregious failure to comply with our agreement, which is why, I talked about that OIG report and sort of what we want to get Congress to do is just another level of pressure. I mean, we're going to keep filing the grievances. We'll always do that. But we're going to utilize every avenue we have because ultimately, if they don't comply with our agreement, the culture in the workplace never improves. That is the foundation of creating a good workplace for letter carriers. Number one is compliance with our agreement. I've never been someplace that they never violated the contract, but it was a bad place. Like the two things always go hand in hand, it seems. So we're going to pull every lever, and certainly after the government shutdown hopefully is over and we get this report, that'll be a big tool for us to use going forward. And look, we talked about everything we're going to do related to collective bargaining. This is going to be a piece of that too.
Well, Brian, it sounds like that.
Compliance.
It sounds like with the new management and obviously Tolino's gone, and it sounds like they're not going to really want to. They have not show too much interest in bargaining. So, would you say that we'll be at arbitration at what is it, 3 months into bargaining is when you guys would decide to go to arbitration? Would you say at this point, if we had a crystal ball in front of us, obviously we waited the 700 days last time, but we're going to just get ready for arbitration, get our case together. I don't know if the same team's still there, the lawyers are still there, but it would appear if we had a guess right now, we're going to go to arbitration and make our case there.
Well, first off, Tolino is still there.
Oh, he's still there.
But
Okay.
yeah, but he's only like committed to be there to the end of the year. Or at least I feel certain he's going to be there to the end of the year. I don't know about next year. I will say this. I suspect that if, given the current environment, it's very unlikely we'll be in either a place. Well, first a timeline. The contract expires May the 21st. After that, by law, there's a 60-day period where mediation takes place. The last 2 rounds of bargaining, we have used the mediation period to continue negotiating as opposed to bringing in a mediator because mediators, they can't mediate things that cost $100 billion. It just doesn't work. I suspect that at the end of that 60-day period, I would be very surprised if we are, and so 60-day period, now we're talking about May, June, July. I'd be very surprised if we are at the point of either a tentative agreement that's worth sending out to our members to consider for ratification. I also would be surprised if we're at a point where that appears attainable. So I mean, look, we'll give it a good faith effort for sure, but I suspect that once we get through that mediation period, we probably will be scheduling interest arbitration as soon as possible. Greg, you mentioned interest arbitration preparation. I mean, that's already ongoing. We have a kind of combination. We've got some people that we've had for a long, long time. Our attorney, obviously, that would serve as our arbitrator, and economist, but we've also got a couple of newer lawyers, and as we get closer there's all kinds of stuff we do. We bring in letter carriers to testify on panels and that stuff. Most of the work being done now is, crunching numbers, postal service stuff, labor statistics, and, things outside of our world and the economy, that type thing. But just based on the environment we're in, that's kind of what my expectation is.
All right. And before we go, friend of the show, Alan Gigax from Classes of Mail. He's all the way in Vegas. So he had us on last week. So Alan, if you just want to ask you one question, then we'll go to wrap up.
You have to unmute him.
Wait. All right. You're good. I can see you, but I can't hear you. There's no, you got the unmute thing?
Look professional, Chris.
We are the most professional podcast out there. All right. Alan was there.
Hey, I'll ask it. He sent me the question.
Okay.
All right. So this is from Alan Gigax, and I feel like this question resonates with 71% of the membership. In order to plan an effective strategy for the upcoming negotiations, it would be helpful to know what was effective last time, what was ineffective, and what progress we were able to make. At the convention in Boston, a resolution was passed that required a full disclosure of the bargaining process once it was completed. The resolution passed. The bargaining has ended. Where can members find this report?
I don't recall anything about a report. I have talked in depth in all sorts of areas about the whole process. I mean, if there's a specific question, I'm happy to answer it, but I'm not sure what the question is. I mean, if the question for me is what do I think was effective last time? What do I think was less effective? Is that the question?
Yeah, I guess. Well, there was a three-part question, right? There was the resolutions,
Yeah,
and
it's
then
kind of hard to follow.
the first two questions were what. I guess the question is, what are you going to do differently compared to the first round? Because cut the long story short, we voted this thing down by a large percentage, and you forced it through the membership, and this is one of the reasons why people are getting out of the union. I see it in my office, right? And it's clearly happening. So the question is, what are you actually going to do differently this time around? And are we going to be able to see progress reports on the website? Is the cut and dry?
I mean, yes, the resolutions that passed, there will be information posted on the website. There will be information provided in an audio format on a weekly basis through our podcast. That's probably more frequently than that, depending on the nature of the meetings and that stuff. So yeah, absolutely, those convention resolutions. Saying people are getting out of the union, that's not true. The NALC is better organized than it's ever been. We're the best organized open shop union in this country, and we have the highest percentage of membership we've ever had. So that may be true in an isolated location. That's not true around the country. And I think the people we have that do organizing around the country do an awesome job. And, our union is strong because of it. I think we've talked a lot tonight about the pieces of our bargaining preparation that are different. Many more people being involved, the in-depth work of the rank and file group. We're going to have another rank and file group the survey that we've talked about that everybody will have an opportunity to fill out. We are doing a full day at our national rap session. It's different than anything we've ever done before, where we've had our executive council members interact directly with our branch and state leaders from around the country. And we are going to have a series of coordinated actions that we have had. In some ways, we've used in different circumstances over the years, but not in a coordinated way where we've done them frequently. Leading up to bargaining in February, and we are going to be wide open to, what we need to do as we move through the process. Should we end up in a place where a single issue bubbles to the surface, like in 2007, I talked about, the subcontracting. That could be an issue that we create, that we think is a problem, not necessarily something the Postal Service is bringing to the table. It could be starting pay. It could be an all career. I mean, it could be anything. To some degree, we've got to remain prepared for what we can do beyond what we plan through February, but also kind of sit and see how things play out. So our preparation's been a lot different. If we are bargaining with the same general group of people at the Postal Service we bargained with last time, I would say the structure of meetings and things like that probably wouldn't change a ton. We do intend to provide more information than we ever have before about what's going on in bargaining to our members. Some of that is pursuant to some of the convention resolutions that were mentioned earlier. So it's going to be a different looking process, but look, over the years, every process has been different. I mean, this will be the fifth one I've been involved in at headquarters, and they continue to evolve. And ultimately what it comes down to for us is, back to John, your comments in the very beginning, a union has such a strength in its rank and file and its level of activism creates the opportunity for us to do really anything that we need to do. And, we're excited about the opportunities that we have in front of us.
All right. Thank you for that. Just before did you say you'll do weekly video up? Did I hear that right?
Well, yeah, we do a podcast every week, and we'll definitely give
Well,
an
during
update.
negotiations, that whole thing, I know that,
Yeah.
but are we all right? I'm running that in pen. Okay. I'm looking forward to that greatly. So I just want to say, we really do appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us.
Sure.
We did, it does sound, that there's more of a proactive approach to doing a rally, public pressure campaigns. This is positive. I think that's good. The rank and file committees are good. I know the date of February 22nd, which is a Sunday. It's a great day to have any rally, I would say. So maybe
He's
bring it
not
up.
going to let it go. He is not going to let
I'm
the
just
February
saying,
22nd
Sunday,
go.
February 22nd is a great day locally to people for pull permits. So I think the greatest gift you could give us would be a day, maybe
Say
Sunday,
it one
February
more time.
22nd.
I had the over-under on 25.
There we go. That's right. But if we can get that, that's good. But the DC rally, I know, us, like I said, we're in Boston. It's 8 hours. Would make that drive down to DC. You need the help. Let us help. We need to be there. You're negotiating. You are the president. The president needs the members to be there. We'll turn out people. Capone, me, we're talking to presidents here in Massachusetts. Everyone likes this. People are ready. We just need a date and a time. The more time, the better. We can get a few months in there. We can make it happen. So please, please, please give us a date. That's it from me. Anyone else? Any other closing remarks from anyone here on the co-host here? You going none? All right. So Brian, thank you for giving us the time. As soon as you do have a date, please let me know. I'll have you on and we can talk about February 22nd, hypothetically. That'd be great.
I won the
Awesome.
bet. He said it 25 times.
I think he's over. Listen, I really appreciate you guys inviting me to be on. It's great to be able to answer some questions and hear different perspectives. I know Chris's primary concern is the date. I will get you a date.
A little.
But look, it's really, I think, exciting to me that there is a lot of energy and not just willingness, but just sort of motivation and almost like a chomping at the bit attitude to really get after this stuff over the next few months, and that's awesome. And I think the challenge for us, kind of back to Capone's question there earlier, is to get more people in that same space over the next few weeks and months. And I appreciate what you guys do to make that happen.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much. All right, everyone. Okay, so we'll be back. So also one thing I do want to plug for people, the working group, the February rank and file group is meeting on Sunday, November 9th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for us football fans here in New England. So do please get involved. This is a rank and file movement we're doing. Like I said, we've had Cariff, Renfroe, James Henry, all have come on and talked in favor of this, of having rallies. The date, of course, questionable. But thank you all again. So Sunday, November 9th, that's definitely happening on Zoom. So please reach out to us, nalcchris@gmail.com, one word, or send us a message on Next Generation Carers podcast. So, all right, everyone, thank you very much. We'll see you on Thursday is our next interview. So we'll be around on Thursday with Mac Julian. So, all right, everyone, thank you very much. And
Thank
see
you,
you next
Brian.
week.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Enjoyed it.
All right, let me just stop the stream. Hold on, everyone. Hold on.